Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm here to give you guys my Walking Dead review, Season 9, Episode 5. And this is it. The moment's at hand. This is Rick Grimes' last episode of The Walking Dead. We're going to find out what's going to happen to Rick. Really excited about it. Obviously, we had the cliffhanger of the last episode. And I got to say, the moment's at hand because... you know, they really have to hit a home run here. They really can't mess this episode up since it's Rick's last episode, and I really hope that doesn't happen. But I gotta say, I'm a little bit concerned because the story was done by Scott M. Gimble. He's not the only one that did the storyline. He's not the only one that wrote it, but with how he handled seasons 6, 7, and 8 of The Walking Dead, I'm a little bit concerned because those weren't the best seasons of The Walking Dead. So hopefully this ends up being good because this kind of has to deliver. Because if this episode doesn't deliver, I don't think anyone's ever going to watch The Walking Dead again. So there's that. But I'm really excited about it though. You know, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they're going to do. We're going to have the return of Shane on this episode. We're going to have, you know, the return of a lot of people on this episode. And it's going to be, I think, an experience. So, kind of disappointed. It looks like, though, that it's only 45 minutes. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But this episode is called What Comes After. And this episode came out, you know, was originally aired on television on November 4th, 2018. And let's stop talking. Let's get right into the episode. If you've watched one of these videos before, you know how I'm going to structure it. I'm going to review the episode itself, then Talking Dead, then end the video. And now that I've kind of discussed all that, I just want to get into the episode. So let's just do that right now. Okay, so I know this video was very, very delayed because I made the intro of the video on January 17th, 2019, and today is February 6th, 2019, or 7th. I don't know exactly when I'll have this video up. I'm hoping the 6th, but we'll have to wait and see. But, yeah, I'm finally here doing the review. What happened is I actually did watch the episode, you know, right after the intro, but it was, like, so late, and I was just so tired and just fatigued from doing the reviews on it and stuff that I wanted to put it off until, like, the next day, and then I just never got around to it. And I wanted to give this episode like a second look because when I watched it the first time, while it was still like epic and awesome, sometimes I like to give things like a second look to see if they really are as good as they are, or if they're better or worse. Because sometimes when you watch something the first time, your adrenaline's pumping, the suspense is killing you, you don't know what's gonna happen. That's kind of how I felt about this, and I still feel the same way about the episode when I watched it. There was other things though that I kind of was thinking about when I watched it the second time, which I just recently did. But then what happened is when I tried to watch it the second time, AMC was like trash and wouldn't let me sign into my Xfinity account and stuff, and you know, would just keep doing that loading screen. So it wasn't happening that day, and I've also just been too busy. I've always thought about doing it, but then wanted to do other videos and stuff, so I just never really got around to it. But now I'm going to do it because I actually want to get these Walking Dead reviews up to date, so that way when it comes back Sunday, I can actually watch it Sunday and do like some type of review video for it. So that's what I'm here to do right now. So let's talk about the episode itself. It was a very exciting episode. This easily is probably one of the best Walking Dead episodes, you know, that's aired in a long time. I don't know if it's the best one that's aired, but it's definitely one of the best ones that's aired in a long time. And I feel like I've just been saying that overall thus far about this season. I feel like that this season has been really superior to, you know, 6, 7, and 8. I might even say 5. Like, a lot of people like 5, but I think that season's kind of overrated. But let's talk about this. I'm not going to break down the scenes chronologically because I feel like with Rick's last episode, it was mainly about Rick. That was part of it will be chronologically, but they do like one other side storyline that I just kind of want to touch on first. just because I feel like if I just kind of touch on it when I'm in the middle talking about Rick stuff, it would just kind of be too complicated and stuff like that. So let's talk about the stuff though that went down with Maggie and Negan. I thought that was awesome the way they shot that scene, where Maggie, approaches a walker and she kills it, and she like stabs it repeatedly, just kind of showing symbolic like that's exactly what she's gonna want to do to Negan once she sees him. And when Maggie finally gets to Alexandria, someone from Alexandria comes and tells Michonne that she's there, and it's Judith that says Aunt Maggie, because Judith is all happy about this. And I thought this was just kind of a nice little thing that they did, because they touched on this on the first episode of the season when Rick had talked about how Judith is consistently asking about Aunt Maggie, there she is finally at Alexandria, and it just kind of was like a nice little thing that they did to kind of show that everyone was happy that Maggie was there. So Maggie's getting ready to go down into the cell and just kill Negan, and Michonne tries to stop her by saying that this isn't what her father and her husband would want. But Maggie really just isn't hearing any of that. She talks about how she's had to, for almost a year, well actually it was a year, but a little over a year, try to get over the fact that Negan didn't die at the end of season 8. That, she doesn't know what her husband would want, because Negan took that away from her, and she talks about how Herschel Jr. Has to live without having a father because of Negan, and says that that if Negan had done the same thing to Rick, at the end of season 6 / the beginning of season 7, things would be, I guess it would be the beginning of season 7, because that's when we actually saw it, things would be a lot different. So Michonne pretty much realizes that she's not going to be able to, talk Maggie out of killing Negan, so she just gives up the key. She did even talk about how killing Negan's going to start like another war with Rick or with somebody else. But Maggie really doesn't care. So Maggie goes into the cell, and this is the first time that Maggie has seen Negan since the end of last season. So what happens is I didn't really mean to say is twice, it just happened. Negan sees her, and Maggie's kind of surprised that he remembers her, and Negan was hoping to see Maggie. Negan was hoping that she was gonna win and finally be able to come down here and confront him. And he talks about how that night when he killed her husband Glenn, that he enjoyed every second of it, of bashing his brains in, and you can pretty much see that he's egging her on to kill him, because Negan pretty much doesn't want to be alive anymore. So by bringing up all this stuff with Maggie, it's going to bring him into a rage where she is going to want to kill him. So Negan gets on his knees, and Maggie goes to unlock the cell and kill him. But Maggie wants to see Negan in the light first, but Negan is just pleading with Maggie to kill her. Well, to kill him. I always mess that up. But Maggie refuses, and so she opens the cell, throws Negan out into the light, so that way she can see him, and just see. This is the first time we've actually seen Negan in the light, and we just see that he's just really beaten down, and that he just is in an awful state. And Negan says that his life wasn't meant to be like this, and he wants to be with his wife Lucille, so he just wants Maggie to kill him, because he doesn't want it to be him, he has to be her. So Maggie orders Negan to get back in his cell, because she said that she came to see Negan, but she sees that Negan is much worse than dead. So Negan obviously grovels and gets back into his cell. She locks it up, and she leaves. I thought this was a hell of a scene. And then obviously she goes back out to Michonne, and the person that Maggie came there with tells them that something went down at the camp, and they leave. But you could kind of see just by like Michonne and Maggie not really saying anything, and Michonne sees that like the pipe or whatever Maggie had brought, the crowbar, wasn't like, bloody or anything. So it's like she knew that Maggie didn't kill him. I just kind of like sometimes when we have those type of scenes. But this kind of in a way was Maggie's vengeance, because I think seeing Negan in this awful state, gives Maggie some closure. That Negan's suffering, and feels like that she's gonna get her comeuppance. So I really like the way they shot the scene. I thought, Jeffrey Dean Morgan acted very well as Negan, and it was just a new side of Negan we really hadn't seen before, of him just suffering because he pretty much is removed from the real world. And seeing Maggie, not kill Negan, and her finally feel like she got her revenge, was very satisfying. And that's pretty much, that storyline. Obviously the rest of the episode was dedicated pretty much towards Rick, which obviously that makes sense because this was Rick's last episode, so you want to dedicate a good chunk of that to him. So let's talk about that. So what happens is we saw Rick, he got like those big plier needles that on like a cinder block driven right through his body, and he's just stuck there. So throughout the episode they do like dream sequences of Rick, because he's bleeding out, and I would imagine the more blood you lose, the more you're prone to hallucinate and that type of stuff. So what happens is he has the first one, and it was obviously a callback to the earlier seasons of The Walking Dead, where you see Rick, in his clothes that he's in the current time, bleeding out, telling himself in the hospital bed. And I think this was supposed to be like him from like earlier in the season when he was shot, telling him to wake up. And we see that birds are flying over. We hear helicopters actually flying to the window. Rick is looking at him bleeding out, and Rick, the guy in the hospital bed, says, "Yeah, wake up, asshole." And then Rick actually comes back to reality, and realizes that he's got to get out of the situation that he's in, or else he's just going to be eaten alive by walkers. But obviously he can't do that, so what he does is he takes his belt off, and there's like a fin that he can use to pull himself out, and that's what happens. And he gets back on his horse and rides away. But obviously, too, one other notable thing I meant to mention is you heard someone like voice in the background ask what his wound was, and obviously the voice was done by Morgan, who obviously now is in Fear of the Walking Dead. But it was nice that they brought back that actor for this scene. And Rick is pretty much struggling to stay awake because he's just absolutely bleeding out. But they did do some like nice callbacks, like you would have flashbacks of the church that they went to, and the season premiere of season 2, the hospital, the scene with like the bike tipped, with the car tipped over when he was shot, and stuff like that. And then he rides over to some sort of like abandoned house, which I think they said they use in like not Zombieland, but some type of zombie movie. I can't think of the name of it, but I could easily probably look it up. But they said they used that in one of the zombie movies. I believe it was like, I actually looked that up real quick because that's gonna bug me now if I don't look that up. But I believe they said though it was like used in one of the Walking Dead, one of like a zombie movie. So I'm just gonna look real quick because I have it like at my access to look at and stuff like that. So they said they used that, and of course it's not like right in front of me, so I can. Oh, Evil Dead 2. That's so and it was like the cabin. It was an abandoned cabin, and we see that somebody, which I hear like the zombies, in that show a lot faster. So it's a good thing that, and when Rick was riding the horse, it's a good thing that it wasn't those zombies because Rick would be screwed, and especially in 28 Days Later, he would be even screwed more then. But obviously he does this so he can rest, and he covers up his room with some like weird, just random cloth he just finds. He doesn't cover it up fully, but covers it up enough where not as much blood is gonna come out of him. We see that someone's committed suicide in there because they just couldn't handle the life of living in a zombie apocalypse. And Rick has his first dream sequence. And this was nice because they also reference again in the first episode when Rick is originally riding a horse and leading the walkers away in like the town. And we see who's in there, none other than Shane, who is obviously played by John Bernthal. I think that's how you say his name. Who obviously, since John Bernthal has become like a pretty big actor since then, he's been, in some war movies. He's in The Punisher, and he's obviously, in other things. And obviously, it was just awesome to see Shane back, because if this was gonna be Rick's final episode, you did need to bring him back, and they pretty much redo the scene from when. From like the very beginning of the show. It was like one of the first interactions of two characters we had when Rick and Shane are in the car eating the French fries and stuff. But this time they're not at a restaurant. They're at the scenery where Rick got shot, and it was very significant because they even talked about how a lot changed that day because because obviously Rick would go into his coma. And we don't know what would it like. The show would be probably a completely different thing if Rick didn't go into his coma and get shot. Probably Rick and Shane maybe still would have been alive together. Maybe Rick wouldn't be who he was today. So I like that, and this was very nice because it was kind of bringing back that dynamic that Rick and Shane had with each other from the earlier seasons where Shane's just kind of being an asshole, and Rick is kind of being humble. Rick even talks about how throughout these dream sequences we see him in, he continuously says that he needs to find his family, and Shane's kind of like, you mean my family, referencing, because Judith actually is Shane's daughter. And they do a funny bit where Shane even talks about how, wondering if he's got any of like his pose, like his eyes, and Rick says she doesn't have your ears or your nose, and Shane pretty much talks about how he's gonna take credit for the reason that Rick is who he is today, which you can obviously make that argument because when Rick killed Shane in the field, that made Rick the character that he was. He became very ruthless. And, Rick said that somebody had to step up and it had to be him. And, Shane's proud of him that Rick stepped up. And this was very nice because this was kind of some nice closure to Rick and Shane's little thing that they had. And, Shane talks about how if Rick wants to get things done and he wants to keep the communities and stuff together, he needs to be the old Rick that, bit somebody's throat off, hold somebody at gunpoint in the church and stuff like that. He needs to bring that rage right back out of Rick. And Rick kind of can't bring himself to do that. He even says that he's sorry, what he did to him back in the field. But, Shane tells him to wake up, and when Rick comes to, we see that it was actually a walker about to, attack him. But I actually loved the sequence with Rick and Shane together. It was kind of like, one final time we were going to see that, and I thought it was awesome. And obviously, too, it makes you, it's kind of like the struggles that Rick's kind of having with himself in real life, because, Rick wants to find his family, and he wants to kind of keep the communities together, and Shane kind of wants to bring back the old Rick out of him. So I thought it was really well done. But the walker tries to attack Rick. Rick escapes, and he really doesn't fight it off because, he doesn't have the energy to do so. So he rides away again in his horse, and then he has another dream sequence. And this time, and when before Rick had gone in with Shane, it was Lori's voice this time that said, "What is your wound?" Which obviously that was kind of significant because that's kind of what Rick and Shane fought over in the earlier seasons. And then obviously when he has another dream sequence where he's at Herschel's farm, and you hear Beth's voice in the background saying, "What is your wound?" Which obviously that's significant because Beth was Herschel's daughter. And Herschel's there. Now I think this means a lot more to fans when it aired, obviously, because Scott Wilson in real life had died, around the time Walking. I think a dead day before the season premiere of this season, and it was his last thing he did as an actor before he died. So this is obviously very touching, more so than it was probably meant to be for some fans. Very touching to me as well. So it is a little bit sad to kind of watch this scene in a way, knowing that Scott Wilson pretty much died not long afterwards because of his leukemia. But it was nice to see Herschel back in the fold, because I always kind of talk about sometimes off camera with people that obviously before Carl died, one of the biggest misses of the show was Herschel. And because I felt like he just kind of brought everybody together, and he just had that positivity that he could make the world okay, even in the worst times. And I thought it was awesome. Now obviously with Herschel, even if he had lived past season 4, he probably would have died at the hand of Negan at the end of season 6 / beginning of season 7, just because of how Negan is. But I like this a lot, because Herschel kind of wanted Rick to make a better world for himself and Carl. And, that's kind of the conversation that they have with each other. First, he apologizes for everything Maggie's lost, but he talks about how Maggie's going to become stronger because of his grandson, Herschel Jr., and says that Rick did everything that he could to make a paradise for his family. And he talks about how Rick has to keep fighting, and says that life will go on, and stuff like that. And Rick, even talks about how he could even stay and just pretty much die, because that's kind of where he's getting at, and let his family move on. But Herschel says that he has to fight with everything in him to keep his family together. He doesn't say that, but he implies it. But this obviously was an awesome dream sequence. Then they have another dream sequence where you hear Tyrese's voice in the background, asking about his wound, and he's in the doctor's office, where you first see Rick come out when he comes to his coma, which obviously that scene was shot really well. I liked how dark it was, and how there was just blood on the walls and just kind of holes all over the place. And you see this door that's open that says "Don't open," dead, keep away, dead inside, or something like that. And of course, a TV actor doesn't follow those type of signs. He's got to open that door. And he opens the door, and he just sees a trail of dead bodies. Some of the highlights were, Carl was there, and Jesus was there, Maggie was there. And we see Sasha come back. Now, I didn't really, react as much when Sasha came back, just because it was pretty cool. But obviously so it wasn't like she had been gone for that long as Shane and Herschel. And Shane and Herschel are just completely bigger characters and just on different levels than Sasha was. But Rick talks about how all these people are dead, but Sasha says that they had a job to do before they died, and they died, and provided people opportunity to kind of, be bigger. Because Sasha said she did that because she's the one that started the war with the Saviors originally, and talks about how Rick can still be stronger and fight past the death and stuff like that. But yeah, I liked Sasha's scene. I really kind of wish they would have brought back Call. I think, because obviously the way that the first half of the season's, well, not the first half, but the first 5 episodes of the season are because of Call. But obviously, I feel like fans probably would have just got kind of pissed off, and I kind of would have been pissed off if they had brought back Call, just because, we would be kind of talking about how it was still a stupid decision for them to kill him off. But what happens is when Rick comes to, he's actually fallen off the horse, and he's back at the campsite where they were building the bridge, and the walkers start coming over. Sorry, I froze for a second. I don't know what happened.
That he finds and kills as many walkers as he can, but then eventually runs out of bullets. So he walks over to the bridge to lure the walkers away still, and he's kind of limping, like he's walking like he is a walker, which was kind of funny. And he has Daryl and everybody else save Rick, and Michonne tells Rick that they're gonna get him out of here. But Rick is like, no, you help them and get yourself back. But Michonne tells Rick to fight because she fell in love with him because he's a fighter, and says that he brought everybody else together. So Rick agrees to fight, and Rick says that I finally found my family and it's you. And they kiss, but Rick realizes that this is just a dream sequence, so he snaps back into reality, and he walks across the bridge, and the walkers start walking across it, and obviously Rick gets worried because the bridge isn't going to hold, and this has been something that Rick kind of has been trying to keep together throughout the whole season. But Daryl and everybody else, you see just when a walker's about to bite Rick, Daryl just shoots it right across the head with his crossbow, and obviously this has ended up being real, and they're gonna save Rick. Michonne and Maggie go to, and I forget the other, no, not Jared. I can't think of the other. Jerry, that's who I'm thinking of. Go to save Rick, but Rick realizes that there's too many walkers, and he tries to stop them, but he can't. He can't radio in telling them not to, because I think he lost his radio in the last episode when him and Daryl got into that scrap over when they fell in the hole and stuff. So he sees like a stick of dynamite fall, and what Rick does is he sacrifices himself to save his family. He realizes that he found his family. It was Daryl, Michonne, and everybody else all along. And he shoots the dynamite. The bridge explodes. And I thought it was a very nice sacrifice. Rick sacrificed the bridge and himself so that way Michonne, Daryl, and everybody else could live. And Maggie and stuff. And I thought it was a very nice scene. You could see that it definitely broke Michonne's heart because Rick was the love of her life, and Daryl, because Rick was like his brother, and he was very distraught, very speechless, and just kind of walks off. And that's kind of like when it goes to commercial. It was a perfect time to put a commercial in there. But it wasn't over yet. Earlier in the episode, Anne had messaged, well, not messaged, I'm saying it like it was tech, but had radioed in to the helicopter, that was going to trade, saying that she was an A, and tells her where to meet, tells the person where to meet her. And the person thinks this is a trick and says that there's going to be consequences. But what happens is when Anne's getting ready to meet the helicopter, she overhears that the bridge is blown up and stuff, and sees Rick, who is laying across the mud, and sees that he's really hurt, about to die. So she says that she has a B, and said that this isn't a trick, and wants them to save Rick's life. And what happens is that the helicopter does, and Rick comes to and realizes that he's going to be safe. So this I don't really like. Honestly, this is why I'm not going to grade the episode an A+, because it would have been an A+ episode had it not been for this scene, because I feel like they should have kind of killed Rick off in a way, just because mainly of what he sacrificed. It really did it made his sacrifice very meaningless in a way, because he sacrificed himself so that way Dale and Michonne and everybody would live. And, sacrifice the bridge so everybody could live. And I feel like now his sacrifice really doesn't mean as much since he survived. It didn't really feel like it was as big of a heroic move. So I feel like they kind of screwed themselves over with that one. I feel like I talked about this before. I think the writers wanted to kind of outsmart the fans, and just kind of say, see, just because we said it's Rick's last episode doesn't mean he was going to die. I think they just kind of deploy the world over our eyes. But now the question I even have, though, is, this is going to be Rick's last episode. What happens now if he didn't die? Obviously, does this mean he's going to come back and at, a later season? It really doesn't make any sense to me. Are they going to do a spin-off? But if they do a spin-off, then what? The whole point that Andrew Lincoln said he was leaving the show was he wanted to spend more time with his family, and we don't need another Walking Dead spin-off. We already have Fear the Walking Dead, and, the writers can't even do both shows right. Both shows kind of fell off the radar last year. I mean, Walking Dead's rebuilding itself now. We don't even know how Fear the Walking Dead's going to do when it comes back in Season 5, so I feel like that was a mistake. I think they should have just killed Rick off. Just because there's really nothing for Rick to live for now. I feel like it just would have been better. That's just what I think. I mean, obviously, I would have kept Rick around if he could have stayed around, but that's just what I think. So I didn't like that part of the scene that, Rick did this big sacrifice just for him not to die. I felt like that was really stupid. And I don't care what Talking Dead says, it was stupid. It was a way to trick the fans in a stupid way. But then we cuts to 6 years into the future. We see a group of people about to get attacked by a swarm of walkers, and they said their names, but I'm not going to really say them. It's probably going to tie into the next episode. And, somebody shoots at them and saves them. We see this little girl, ask what their names are, and they say them. And the people ask what her name is, and she puts the hat that Carl has been wearing the whole show pretty much up until the past couple of seasons since he's been dead. So Rick's sheriff hat, and says Judith Grimes, and that's how the episode ends. Which I guess was a nice ending. You got to kind of see Judith now all grown up and ready to take on the world, and it looks like maybe it's going to be kind of how she's going to take the world. So I actually like that. It's just, I feel like an asshole for saying this, but this would have been so much better if it was Carl. It should have been Carl, and this is why I'm really fucking pissed that they killed Carl off, because this could have been the opportunity for Carl to be the main character, for Carl to be the lead actor, and get to see him kind of take this world and beat this. This pisses me off even more that they killed Carl off, so that's just what I think. And yeah, but that was the end of the episode. But if you were to ask me, they should have ended the show here. This would have been a very fitted ending for the show. Rick being gone. You know, you get Judith being all grown up, and well, she's not all grown up. She's like about probably 7 or 8 years old, maybe 9. But her kind of being developed and stuff, and I think they should have ended the show here, but obviously they're not going to do that because they're just not going to do that. But I think this would have been the best spot to end the show, you know. But that's is what it is. But it did definitely feel like the end of a chapter and the beginning of a new chapter. I am intrigued to see what the next phase of The Walking Dead is going to be. Just because, you know, now we get to kind of see what it's going to be like without Rick. And it's going to be very different, I think. I want to kind of see what the next phase of The Walking Dead is going to be like. And I'm not as concerned now about Rick being gone as I would have been if, you know, Robert Cookman was still, like, one of the lead writers. Now it's Angela Khan, and I'm interested to see what happens now without Rick. Next, you know, the next few episodes are going to be that way. And I'm obviously still going to watch The Walking Dead. I'll probably watch the rest of the season because you really can't judge how it's going to be just based off this season because Rick has been in it for so long. So we are going to kind of see what it's like. So I'm actually very interested to see what happens. But that was the end of this review. I know it went on a while, but this was a big episode. A lot of stuff happened. So, and this is kind of cool that, you know, they did something like this in the 5th episode. I feel like they should have saved this for the mid-season finale, but maybe they got a bigger plan. But I actually kind of like that, you know, we got to kind of see that they're making every episode of Walking Dead kind of feel big, feel musty. So, will that week be like that? Who knows? But let me do my letter grade for this episode. I thought this episode was awesome. The way they killed Rick off, well, the way they sent Rick off, I thought was the way to do it with, you know, him having this big impact and stuff. And I like the stuff they did with Negan and everything. Just, you know, the only things I really didn't like is that Rick survived in the end, and, you know, the fact that it wasn't kind of Carl in a way that was at the end and stuff. But that's just kind of minor things. So I'm going to give this episode an A. I thought it was a fantastic episode, and it definitely intrigues me to want to watch episode 6 after I watch, you know, Talking Dead and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm going to give this episode an A. And a lot of the, you know, critics and stuff agree with me. I believe I can actually pull it up, you know, on my Facebook real quick. Let me actually just see if I can. I actually was going to have this set up originally, but I forgot to pull it up. So, the people on IMDb gave this episode a 9 out of 10. They really liked it. They just didn't like the ending like me. And the people on Rotten Tomatoes gave it a I think they gave it like a So I had this set up, but they gave it a 76%. It got a 6.4 rating out of 10. And out of 33 reviews, 25 rated it fresh and 8 rated it rotten. I think some people didn't like it because they thought they could have done a lot more the way it ended and stuff. But a lot of people liked it. But that's pretty much the review. I'm going to watch Talking Dead and come back with my review of that. So once I watch that, I'll come back and review it. Okay, so now on to Talking Dead Season 8, Episode 5, which is titled the same name as, you know, the title of Walking Dead Season 9, Episode 5. And it was hosted by Chris Hardwick, and we had special guests Andrew Lincoln, Melissa McBride, Scott M. Gimble,
which I actually made mistaken. It wasn't Robert Kirkman that made the decision to kill off Carl. It was Scott and Gimble. I just fucked up the name. And Yvette Nicole Brown. She's best known as a role as Helen from Drake and Josh. And I really liked this one. This is probably the best Talking Dead that you're ever going to see, mainly because most of the episode was focused around Andrew Lincoln. But obviously, this is definitely probably the most noteworthy episode that I've seen anyways, because we found out right away what's going to happen to Rick Grimes, after The Walking Dead. We find out that Rick's story actually isn't over. We find out that they're going to apparently be starting some AMC films that are going to air on the AMC network, and they're going to focus around a trilogy of films involving Rick Grimes, about what, where he was taken in the helicopter and all that stuff, which that will be interesting, actually, to kind of see that, because you get to kind of see Rick in a new environment with new people. And I tried looking up some information about it, as Talking Dead was on and stuff. And we really don't know anything about it. We know that production for the, Rick Grimes film is going to start. So I'm interested to see where that goes. But what I also found interesting is Scott and Gimple didn't just really mention, though, that they're just going to do this, with Walking Dead, with just Rick Grimes. They're going to bring in some other movies with other characters and just do stuff from the future. So, if these Rick Grimes movies end up doing well, this could open up the door for more possibilities for AMC to do things with the zombie apocalyptic type of movies. I'm actually kind of quite interested to see what would happen with that. I still hold on to my belief, though, that Rick should have died at the end of this episode because of what, he sacrificed and stuff. I feel like his sacrifice doesn't mean as much and stuff, and this should have been the end of Walking Dead. But, that's just me. And I'm kind of concerned because Scott and Gimple, I feel like, we kind of saw what he did to Walking Dead during season 6 through 8. I have my concerns about that. But, also we had other things on this episode. Yvette Nicole Brown interviewed Andrew Lincoln about his time on the show. About, continuation of the story, which he didn't really go into detail because I think they had this interview kind of like maybe a little bit pre-taped before they had announced it, or maybe they didn't, pre-tape it, but, obviously the announcement probably had been made when they pre-taped this interview and stuff. But he talked about, some of his favorite moments on the show, and things like that. His, talked about how the show can still continue. And they... Chris Hardwick tells a funny story how Andrew Lincoln and Norman Reedus play funny pranks on each other where they use glitter, and Rick tried to blow it off his hand. Well, Andrew Lincoln tried to blow it off his hand, and it just went poof right into his face. There's even a funny a nice little montage video where it shows Andrew Lincoln throughout this time on the show, and kind of shows everything that he's done and what everybody meant to him. You see Lowen Cohan and Scott Wilson, which is kind of sad, obviously, because it was his last interview before he died. And I don't know her name, but the person that plays Michonne talk about what Andrew Lincoln meant to the show. And yeah, it was definitely very significant. This is probably one of the most significant Talking Dead episodes you're going to see. And that's pretty much it. I actually enjoyed Talking Dead. I thought it was pretty good. And now the moment's at hand, though. Now we get to see kind of where Walking Dead goes now that there's, now that Rick Grimes and stuff is out of the show. And I'm interested, I gotta say. I'm going to watch the next episode, obviously right after I upload this video. So I'll make sure to do that, right afterwards. But before, obviously, I know this video is going up late, very late, but before I end the video, I do want to say thank you to Andrew Lincoln for all, for all your time on the show, dedicating, your time and, obviously, put in, all your faith into the show and stuff and all the work you did on the show. And I look forward to seeing what other projects he has coming up. You know, obviously he's going to be doing some directing. He did say he shadowed a director doing the mid-season premiere of The Walking Dead, so that will be interesting. And yeah, I just thank you, Andrew Lincoln, for all your time on the show, and I look forward to seeing you do other projects, whether that's, you know, with the new trilogy of films as Rick Grimes, or anything else you decide to do with movies and stuff. So thank you, Andrew Lincoln, and that's pretty much the end of that. And that is the end of my review for, you know, The Walking Dead Season 9, Episode 5. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's going up very late, but thank you guys for bearing with me. Leave your thoughts and comments about what you thought of this episode, and that make sure you guys also share this video so people will watch it. Make sure you guys subscribe to this channel for more content and click on the bell, so that way every time I upload a video, you guys will get the notifications for it. And make sure you guys do the same thing for my CM Brothers channel, because I post videos on there as well. I'll be posting a video on there tomorrow, Red versus Blue. Me and my cousin will be reviewing that. But until then, talk to you guys later, and that's about it.